Hello and welcome to the event. MoneyHub and Easy Crypto presents Crypto 101. I'm your host, Doug Shepard, and today with me I have Janine Grainger, CEO and founder of Easy Crypto. I'll pop you on her screen. I'll pop you on your screens now.
Hey,
There we
Doug,
go.
thanks for having me on.
No worries. Now, Janine, you've been working in positions that require a strong strategic mind for quite a long time. And the first thing I wanted to ask you to kind of get the ball rolling was what made you want to take the leap from working in big corporates like Westpac in Air New Zealand to building your own startup?
Yeah, it wasn't an overnight decision. It was something that, like many things in life, came about quite gradually. My brother and I started Easy Crypto back in 2017. And at that time, I was working on the business as a side hustle, still had my full-time day job, and was just sort of, working the nights and weekends to grow the side business, like many Kiwis do when they start a company. By the time we got around to 2020, we'd grown the business big enough that I could move into it full time. And then COVID hit, and we actually had this crazy ride during COVID with so many people got into cryptocurrency for the first time in 2020. I think a whole lot of reasons for that, which, maybe we can delve into a bit later on, but it really made it a bit of a wild time. And it was very good timing for me to get into the business. And it was something that, after all the learnings I've had from corporate and from various parts of my career, being able to bring those over to my own company has been, really rewarding.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense because I remember everyone being at home during the lockdown thinking, well, I've got so much time. I wonder what I should do with that time. And they were reading, they were learning new skills, and one of the big things was crypto, and it exploded into the scene, and we saw a lot of new resources pop up, and with Easy Crypto being one of them, I'm just really glad that you've made the decision to jump into the crypto world and just really help us out with getting access to new investments, super low fees, and all the work. So from everyone watching, like, we're really grateful that you're in the crypto world. And with that, I'll pass it on to you to do your presentation for around 25, 30 minutes, and then I'll jump back and we'll do some Q&A a bit later.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Doug. All right, team. Well, we'll start off with, if you aren't already on Slido, jump on in. You can ask questions. I don't know, Doug, if you want to put the link in the chat as well. For anyone, pop your questions in there. I will try to keep an eye on them as I go, but we'll mainly be probably having a good solid second half of this hour-long session to answer questions. So keep them coming. Where I wanted to start today. So today we're going to do a little bit of a 101 of what is crypto. And then based on some of the questions we've had coming through in the lead up to this, we're going to do a bit of a focus on making money in cryptocurrency, paying tax on the money you make, and how to not fall for scams, which is a really big topic and one that a lot of people have been asking about, which is really great to see. So first up, what is cryptocurrency? Now, most simply, cryptocurrency is just another form of money or another form of asset, but it's a fully digital asset. And when you think about how money has changed over time, we've got a sort of a bit of a progression of, we started off bartering things, then we moved to value, stores of value such as gold. We iterated that out to paper money. That paper money is, now just really paper. It's not even backed by gold anymore. Then to make things easier and more accessible, things like credit cards and sort of like easier ways to transact came in. And if anyone here on the call was around when credit cards were first introduced, you might remember a lot of people being very skeptical about this, thinking like, what is this? This isn't real money. It's just this plastic thing. And with the newest iteration, which is cryptocurrency, you've got the same sort of skepticism. Every time you bring in a new form of doing an old thing, there's a lot of sort of question marks and a lot of naysayers, I guess. But if you step it back and think about how the world that we're living in is changing. Again, those of us who are around before the internet, which is definitely me and probably most of us on this call, you'll have an appreciation for how much the internet has changed the world that we live in. It's really digitized information, and that has, how we live in our day-to-day jobs, how our entertainment works, how we find out answers to questions, how we engage with our friends, even a event like this, right? The internet makes this possible, and it digitizes information in a way that was so unheard of, 50, 100 years ago. And even when the internet first came out, we never would have thought about all of the ways that digital information would change how we live our lives. So cryptocurrency is really just digitization of assets. And I think we're still very early days on understanding what that means. But from my perspective, I don't see that we would have a future world where things like our, titles for houses, stocks and shares, our mortgages, our bank balances, all of those things will digitize over time. I've worked in banks before, and I know that behind the scenes, while it looks like your money's, digital in your phone app, there's a lot of things that are still in paper files. There's a lot of information being manually entered places. There's a lot of, really old school technology that sits behind our money today. So moving money digital means that we can have 24/7 instant access. It can be programmable. It can have very low cost of access. It can have, innovation can be built on top of money. And I think that is the really exciting opportunity with cryptocurrency. So that's sort of like the digital assets more broadly, but bringing it back to cryptocurrency, which is, just one subset of that. Cryptocurrencies are a pretty diverse bunch, so they're not all one thing. You can sort of loosely turn them into different generations. Bitcoin was the first ever cryptocurrency created. It really set the stage for how can you make an asset digital and solve this problem of authenticity and of making sure that, if I send you a Bitcoin, I can't reverse or delete or change that transaction. So it's like, how do you have trust in a system where your assets are digital and where you don't have a central point of contact or control? And that was a really interesting problem that Bitcoin solved for. It was one that people had been trying to solve for decades. And it was really, life-changing for that to take place. But Bitcoin's very simple. All it does really is allow you to send a transaction from one person to another. It's a pretty basic sort of digital asset. Ethereum came along and built in these concepts of smart contracts. And with smart contracts in the Ethereum stack, you've got heaps more ability to innovate, to change how you do things, again, to make money programmable, to, tell your assets to move, to do certain things based on certain conditions. And there's a whole lot of really interesting innovation that Ethereum enables. And then we've seen this constant progression through more where my screen go, generations of crypto assets. Some of these are solving problems of speed, of scalability, of governance. Again, as crypto assets are not controlled by any central entity, they are decentralized. And a lot of cryptocurrencies have this idea of governance by people within the network. So if you are a part of the Ethereum network, you can be part of the governance, part of deciding how things are changed, how that innovates and builds over time. And so these other generations have sort of been looking at solving those kind of problems and adapting how cryptocurrencies work and solving the issues that the first and second generations have had. Cryptocurrencies can also be seen with some sort of parallels to traditional assets. So Bitcoin, again, it's the first ever crypto. It's not the most it's not the best to use for things like payments. It's not super fast. It'll take around 10 minutes at a minimum to confirm a transaction. It's not the cheapest. You definitely wouldn't use Bitcoin to, buy a coffee at your local cafe, just in the same way that you wouldn't use gold for that. But Bitcoin's got a lot of mana. It's been around for, well over a decade now, coming up to 2 actually. It's had, it's tried and tested, and it's really well known and well regarded. Most people, if they've only ever heard of one cryptocurrency, it will be Bitcoin. So many people see it as a store of value, a way to, hold funds that, they believe will appreciate over time, similar to gold, and provides a diversification from other assets. Then you've got things that you can use for income generation, like a term deposit. You can park your money in something like the example I've used here is Aave. You can park your money there and you can earn interest on it. Again, similar to that traditional asset of a term deposit. And with a term deposit, your bank is giving you interest and they're lending out your money to someone else. That's exactly the same thing that's happening here, but it's through DeFi. So it's happening without any central point of control, without any sort of middleman clipping the ticket or, having to undertake work on that. You can also buy, Ethereum, I see sort of as a share in an infrastructure company, like buying into an airport. There's a whole lot of different tokens or projects that are building on top of the Ethereum stack. And they're like planes that are coming in with their customers or their users being like the passengers in the airport. So you've got a lot of traffic, a lot of people coming and going. And that means the airport, if it's a successful airport, that asset will appreciate in value. And that's similar to, some of the rationale for investing in Ethereum. Then you've got things like new startup projects, which I see are a bit like angel investing. They're pretty risky, 99% of startups will fail, probably even higher numbers with new token listings. But if you're not investing too much and if you're just taking a punt, this is where you have that opportunity for the best return where, if you invest in a startup at a very early stage, you could get 100x, 1000x on your investment. Similarly, if you buy early into a coin that actually does become successful. But again, risk for reward, right? Like potential for reward, but a very high risk. And most of these will fail, just like their parallels in the traditional finance world. And lastly, you've got the much talked about NFTs, which are like art. And again, with art, you want to buy it if you like it and you enjoy it and you want to put it on your wall. Or if you think the artist has value, has a reputation, and it will be worth more in the future. So all of these, cryptocurrencies, and I hope the last two slides have given a bit of an appreciation that crypto isn't just one thing. There's many different things under that bucket. They have different purposes, and they're not too dissimilar from traditional finance in some regards. But of course, I'm just picking a few examples here that line up. There's also so much more happening in the world of crypto. So probably the question that I think many people have, and I did definitely see it come through on the pre things, is what is crypto worth? I've drawn a quote here that again is a parallel to the internet, and the great quote that the internet's pretty much not going to have any impact on the economy, and we know that is definitely not true. But what is crypto worth? And this all comes down to what you believe will happen in the future, and also the fundamental economics of supply and demand. So again, my belief is that we will see assets digitized in the future. Whether or not crypto plays a role in that and how big a role, these different types of cryptocurrency play, that will really depend on how the world digitizes. Are assets going to digitize in a way that is centralized, central bank digital currencies as one example, or will we be using decentralized things such as stable coins? Stable coins are a particular cryptocurrency that are pegged to an underlying asset, usually a fiat currency. So USDC is a cryptocurrency that's pegged 1-to-1 with the US dollar. And that's really popular in crypto circles. The US government hasn't yet issued a central bank digital currency, but when it does, it'll be interesting to see, do we as a global economy use centralized stable coins centralized currencies issued by banks and governments, or do we use decentralized stable coins? And chances are we'll probably use both. And so there'll be this sort of, wave of how the world digitizes when it comes to assets in ways that are both centralized and decentralized. Cryptocurrency, I think, will play a role in that. But there's also the question of, fundamentally, from an economic standpoint, what is this stuff worth? And you've got supply and demand, classic economics 101. So supply side, this is looking at Bitcoin. You've got a fixed supply of Bitcoin. There'll only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in existence, no more than that. And don't worry, you don't have to get a whole Bitcoin. They're divided up into very small chunks. So, if you want to just buy $1 of Bitcoin, you can. You don't have to get a whole one. And then on the demand side, you've got people purchasing Bitcoin for a whole lot of different reasons to diversify their portfolios. Again, there's that kind of commonplace view of Bitcoin being similar to gold in terms of a way to store value in a diversified manner. It won't necessarily move the same as other assets. You've definitely got FOMO at play here. And you've also got use cases. And, with Bitcoin, there's the transfer of value. With other cryptocurrencies, you have ecosystem access, practical use cases. These all drive the demand side of cryptocurrency, which the balance between supply and demand will be market price. And I wouldn't try to predict that, but hopefully that gives a bit of an appreciation of the types of things to think about when you're looking at the value of cryptocurrencies. All right. So I put a slide in on passive income because there's quite a few questions on this. And I think we'll dig into this a bit more later on when we talk about scams. And I'll definitely want to get a bit of input and thoughts from you guys on this as well. But there is a whole lot of different ways that you can earn income in cryptocurrency. And again, be very, very careful, and we will touch on this in scams, but be very careful to validate where and how you are getting your income. If you're having to put in your capital, like put in your money in order to make money, you need to be really careful that you're putting your funds into something reputable and that you're not investing in a scam. So, but to go back to the sort of overall, ways that you can earn income in cryptocurrency, there's lending. So the example I gave before of Aave is a lending platform. So I can invest money into Aave. I could invest, say, 1,000 USDC, and Aave, through its decentralized smart contracts, will lend that USDC out to someone who wants to borrow it. The borrower will put down collateral. So they might say have some Bitcoin that they don't want to sell their Bitcoin, but they want to borrow against it to perhaps buy a car or, do something in the real world. So their Bitcoin's held as collateral. Aave is monitoring the price of that. Again, all of this is automatic. There's no one, no humans involved doing this. It's all just run through a computer code. And if at any point the value of their Bitcoin drops too low in relation to the amount of the loan, it will automatically be liquidated. So this is a really safe way to earn passive income, because you've got a collateralized loan, and that collateral is controlled by the computer code, and it will be liquidated to ensure that you can be paid off. Of course, no investing is risk-free, but this is one of the less risky options. You've also got mining and staking, and this is where you are helping run the network that the cryptocurrency is operating on. So mining is that really energy intensive computers that, big chunky computers that are solving complex problems and using energy to do so. So unless you're able to set up one of those yourself, you'd have to join a mining pool. And again, be very careful you're not investing in a scam if you're looking at anything like this. Staking is a bit more accessible. You can stake with 32 ETH is the minimum to run your own node, but there are companies like Coinbase and others that are offering pools that you can put in a smaller amount of ETH and be part of a pool that is running staking. Similar, I probably won't go into the rest of these because these are a little bit more complicated, extra for experts, but it hopefully gives a little bit of an idea that there is a lot of different ways that people are offering income in cryptocurrency. Again, be on the lookout for scams and make sure you're, really investigating anything that you want to invest in. But there is lots of different opportunities out there, and there can be some good income opportunities, like, liquidity farming. It had its heyday probably a year or so ago, but it had some really interesting upsides on that. Much higher risk though, and definitely, lending and staking are your lower risk opportunities here. All right, so that brings us on to how to spot a scam. And I think to start with here, I really want to stress there's a common misconception that, you're stupid if you get caught out by a scam. You are not too smart to fall for a scam. I am not too smart to fall for a scam. Scammers are really, really good at what they do. They're absolute experts in, emotional manipulation and, pretending that what they're doing is legitimate. And they've also got tools now such as AI. And this is really problematic. So the image I've got here is this was something I saw one of our team found on Facebook of, a news presenter appearing to present, and it's in her voice talking about this weight loss thing where she lost 10 kilos. Now, aside from the fact that I don't think she's ever had 10 kilos to lose, this, it really sounds like her, the AI has, generated the voice, generated the movements, and it looks really convincing. You can't trust what you see online is very challenged. It's a problem, and it's only going to get worse as, AI tooling becomes more and more available. So be prepared to be, be aware that you can fall victim for a scam, and be prepared that they are really, really convincing and, getting more so. So in terms of, and one other thing with, to watch out for is any investment opportunity that approaches you, whether it's a phone call or you see an ad online or you get a direct message, if it approaches you, it is 99% likely to be a scam. The reason for this is that in New Zealand, it is illegal to call people with investment opportunities. So if someone rings you and, if you still have a landline, you're probably more likely to get this. It is 100% a scam because it would be illegal for a reputable company to call you. Similarly, if you get a direct message from someone, whether it's on Facebook, Discord, LinkedIn, no one's out there really trying to offer you genuine investment opportunities. They're just trying to trick you into scams. And even if you see ads online or see, promo videos like this one here, there's very few reputable companies out there that are advertising, and none of the DeFi companies are out there doing advertising. So scammers are out there in force. Very few reputable companies are. So it is most likely that any ad you see, any direct message you receive, or any phone call you get is a scam. So sorry, I know the scam stuff's a bit of a downer, but there was a lot of questions on it, and it is really important to get, to be educated and be prepared. So talking of, the most effective way to guard against scams is to do your own independent research. And this is where I'd love to get some comments from you guys on how you do this. So what are the ways that you find out if something's really true, find sort of an authentic source and an independent way to do research on an opportunity? Do we have a, sorry, Doug, is the comment section available to everyone? Or?
Hey, yeah, so just a quick thing on the comment section, you might need to refresh the browser, and then the live chat will then come about. So if you're watching and you can't see the live chat, just give it a refresh and then you should be good to go.
All right, so independent research, super important. Obviously, you can start with Googling something, see what people are saying about it. There are some independent, review sites, things like Trustpilot that, can be a good place to start. But remember, anyone can submit a review. So scammers can, get a whole little army of bots to put their reviews up there. So you need to be, take that one with a grain of salt. Any site that you find which is reviewing an investment opportunity, if it links to that investment opportunity, be very cautious because, again, scammers can spin up their own site to promote that. One of your best ways is to go through some of the Facebook community groups where you can have other people join the Easy Crypto community group, ask questions in there. Don't engage with anyone on direct messages, but if you're asking out in the open, other people can help weigh in and help you, with some advice, with thoughts on this. I did have one question that came through around the Bitcoin BSC pre-sale. So this question came through. I hadn't heard of Bitcoin BSC before that. It is offering staking on Bitcoin. And this is a really good example of sort of, I guess, how to do research. So I had a look at this opportunity. I'm like, okay, it's a real coin. It is listed. You can find it on, independent listing sites. Look at CoinMarketCap, see if you can find things there. But while the coin itself might be real, is the opportunity real? And this coin is offering staking, which is passive income on Bitcoin, but it's not on Bitcoin. It's making a whole new thing that it's calling Bitcoin and offering staking income on it. And so while it might be genuine that, yep, you can, it'll pay out X amount of, maybe you get 10% back in the Bitcoin BSC tokens. If no one is buying or selling those tokens, if no one's using them, they won't have any value. So while you might receive that staking income, there's not going to be any sort of monetary benefit. So there's really a big question. And again, talking in community groups can help you sort of understand and tease some of these things out. Is this a project that people will actually want to use and actually want to invest in? Does it have a real world use case? This one, the only thing it's offering is staking. So, it looks like it's encouraging people to put their money in to earn this income. But if no one is actually going to use the coin, the value of the coin will massively decline, and the income won't be worth anything. All right, I think we're probably done with scams, but do sing out if you have any questions on that. I'm not seeing anything come through. We'll move on to another fun topic, tax. So we had a few questions on this, so I thought I would put in a little summary. I'm not a tax expert. I do recommend go and get tax advice if you have simple tax requirements. So you can use something like Taxoshi, who are a New Zealand-based company. You can sort of upload your transaction data and they'll help you calculate your tax. If you've got more complex requirements, have a chat to an accountant. There's a couple of good ones in New Zealand. Evans Doyle is one. So Tim Doyle from Evans Doyle is a tax cryptocurrency tax specialist. Really knows his stuff. He's got a good team there as well. So the 101 on tax on cryptos is that cryptocurrencies are taxed as income when they are disposed. And I've highlighted two keywords here, which I'll just explain. So when you tax something as income, it means it is taxed as, as if you were getting paid like your salary. And it will be taxed at your marginal tax rate. So New Zealand has a sliding tax scale. If you earn under, I don't know it off the top of my head, but it'll be say 9% for your first X $1,000, and it goes all the way up to 39% if you're earning over somewhere in the six figures. So if you have your top tax rate as 39%, that's what your cryptocurrency income will be taxed at. If your top tax rate is lower, you'll have that as your cryptocurrency rate. And when they are disposed, now this is a great little tax word, but what disposal means is when you get rid of that asset. So you can sell it for money, getting New Zealand dollars back in your bank account. You can exchange it. So if you swap Bitcoin for Ethereum, you have disposed of the Bitcoin and you need to recognize tax on the profit you made there. And I should point out, you don't pay tax on 100%. So if I bought some Bitcoin for, say, $1,000 and I sell it a couple of years later for $3,000, I pay tax on the difference. So the $2,000 profit I made is what I pay tax on. If you have your crypto in your wallet and you're using it to pay for goods and services, that's also a disposal. So that needs to be treated as a taxable event. And lastly, if you give it away to someone, if your mum's lucky and you gave her some crypto for her birthday, that's you disposing of it. So it's taxable then. All right. How are we going? We're about at 1 o'clock. I could jump into some crypto myths, or we could jump into the Q&A. Should we maybe go to Q&A and break it up a little bit? Thanks for all the great links there, Doug. I didn't prep him for this, so he's just winging it. Okay, cool. I'm going to start with the most popular questions. All right, how to earn passive income. Hopefully I've answered that one. That one came a little while ago. Len asks, I have heard that some banks refuse to cash out crypto proceeds. Fact or fiction? There are no banks that flatly refuse to process cryptocurrency, but they might have questions about where it's come from. And the reason for this is that banks have, as do we, have obligations to comply with anti-money laundering legislation. So if you're an Easy Crypto customer and you sell crypto through us, we will have done due diligence on it. Like, if you bought it through us, no problem. If you sourced it somewhere else and sell it through us, we'll have made sure that, we're all okay, that you're not, laundering dodgy proceeds of crime. And so if you're an Easy Crypto customer and you have any issues with your bank, just let us know and we're happy to contact them and give them an explanation and let them know that your money is all legitimate. If you're selling crypto through other places, you might have questions from your banks. And if so, you just need to be able to explain to them, hey, this is where I got the money from. It's not in any way illegitimate. And then, they should be able to clear that fine. I haven't heard of anyone having transactions refused, although I have heard of people having their bank accounts closed for crypto trading. Sorry, I'm reading Debbie's question in the chat. When you say you pay tax on gifting and buying. So Debbie, if you have, say you have $1,000 of crypto in your wallet and you use $100 of it to buy something, you've disposed of the $100 and you have to pay tax on any profit. So if you bought that crypto originally for less, you'll pay tax on the profit. If you bought the crypto for more and you've actually sold it at a loss, you can claim a tax refund or tax rebate. We've got a question around just how risky is crypto? Is it trading or investing? Yeah, this is a good question, right? So most cryptocurrency, most people engaging with crypto at the moment are speculating. So I wouldn't call it investing. It's more like, if you buy and sell currencies and hope that they appreciate in value, that's similar to what, cryptocurrency is at the moment. Longer term, I see cryptocurrency as an investment, but in the short term, it's definitely more of a speculative asset. And it is risky. I mean, absolutely. And you need to think about, for you personally, what is your risk tolerance? What's your sort of risk profile? And also look at how you're diversifying your wealth. MoneyHub's a great sort of resource for looking at your overall financial health. And cryptocurrency is just one component of that. So what I often hear in sort of the global financial advisor stage is, you maybe want to look at around 5 to 10% of your portfolio in crypto. You wouldn't want to put in more than that because it is quite high risk. For someone like me, I definitely have more than 10% of my wealth in crypto, but that's, I'm not your average investor, right? So if you're investing in other assets, say you have stocks, maybe you've got some value in your house, you might want to look at, just a little bit, a few percent into crypto, but definitely don't remortgage your house and invest it all. Chris asks, how does the Vault International Bitcoin Fund work? Yeah, this is a really interesting product. So it's built here in New Zealand, and it is a PI fund. So if you're familiar with, traditional investments like, Kiwi Savers, managed funds, those things, you can set them up as PI funds. And the PI fund is taxed at a, this is challenging. I should know this. I used to know this. I think it's taxed at the sort of the foreign investment, rate. It's like basically got a deemed rate of taxation, and it does not get taxed on the value, the underlying asset value change. So if you hold Bitcoin directly, so you hold it in your own wallet, there is no tax on it at all until you sell it. And when you sell it, you get taxed on the difference. I mean, effectively is a capital gains tax that, you bought it at $1, you sold it at $5, you get taxed on the difference. with the Vault International Bitcoin Fund, there is no capital gains tax on that because you pay, a small amount of deemed dividend every year. If Bitcoin goes up, 10 times, 100 times, you can sell that without having a big tax bill. So if you expect Bitcoin to go up in value, it could be a good opportunity, but you are also not holding the Bitcoin directly. It's a little bit of a different vehicle for it. Reach out to the team there and sort of learn more about it if you're interested in that product.
Yeah, actually, just following up on that, Janine, because it's a really good point there when you said, like, if you believe kind of the values going up and stuff within the investment regard. Someone asked a question actually about when they're investing in a stock, let's say the underlying asset is the business. So if they believe that the business is going to be more profitable, get more customers, then the value will go up and their investment value will go up. And the person that's asking this question is basically saying, if the stock's underlying asset is the business, what's the underlying asset in crypto, and how can I kind of assess it in my own way? Because we talked about the research that can be done to, I guess, tackle the legitimacy of it, but how do you
Yeah.
actually do your kind of due diligence on it from like a stock investment point of view?
100%. Great question. And so I've jumped back to this slide because I think this is kind of a relevant thing that, some Bitcoin is not at all like a company. Like Bitcoin doesn't have customers. It's not selling a product. It's just a thing. So that's why it's more similar to gold. And when you're thinking about investing in gold, you're looking at what are the fundamental economic drivers? Like what is the global economic environment? How do I think gold is going to perform? High inflation environments can have impacts on this. There is definitely a lot less longevity of information about, gold. We know how it's performed over high, low interest rates, global financial crises, everything for the last couple of 100 years. Bitcoin, we haven't even got 2 decades of information. So you don't have as good information to sort of make those assessments on. But for Bitcoin, it's definitely, do you think the global economic environment and the supply and demand for this is likely to have an increase? Something like Ethereum, though, is much more similar to a company in that it has use cases, it has revenue coming in, sort of. It's probably a bit more of a technical point there, but like maybe looking at some of the projects that are built on top of Ethereum, some of those do have revenue. So they'll have customers that they're making income from. And you can look at those fundamentals, and definitely you should, right? Like, unless you're just throwing a bit of money that you don't care about, if you actually want to do your due diligence, which I completely, endorse everyone to do, you want to look at those fundamentals in the same way you would if you're assessing a company to invest in for buying shares. What is the product? Is their product market fit? Who are the team behind it? Do they have a good track record? How long has it been in market? What are the revenue lines for it? And so you can do that research. And one of the great things about crypto is that it's super transparent. So if you're wanting to research on a traditional stock, you'll get the financial statements once a year. You'll get a half yearly earnings report. But in the interim period, it's a bit of a black box. You don't know what's going on inside that company. For cryptocurrency, because everything's so transparent, you can see every single day, how many people are buying or selling this coin, what's the price it's trading at, how many people are, in the case of something like, Aave, how many loans are out at the moment, what are the, how's the collateral looking like? All of this information is public and available. So there are some, there are some pros and cons compared to traditional stocks. You've got more transparency, but you've also got, it's much more risky. It's newer. There's less of that, longevity and track record.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you bring up the point, kind of going back to gold and how similar kind of store of value and things like that. Because one of the other questions that people were asking was like, what's kind of the value of cryptocurrency to society? And we've touched on that in so many different areas. But there was another question that built on it, which I think is worth answering, kind of around the we obviously have gold being used in the past as a store of value by a lot of governments just across the board, and kind of still is. And then they're moving into their own currencies like the US dollar, NZD, UK pound, all those things. And this person was really interested in seeing kind of the ability for it to fully replace every single currency. And I know that we've seen some kind of examples in Brazil and some other areas where they're kind of using it more in transaction space. And I know we briefly touched on it, but I think we'd love to hear kind of your take on it more, because Easy Crypto has spent a lot of time exploring different markets and encouraging this kind of accessibility for people to use Bitcoin specifically, but also different cryptocurrencies in terms of exchanging for value. So what's kind of your take on all of that? Like, do you think it will replace everything, or?
Personally, I don't think Bitcoin will replace all of our, government issued money. But you are seeing some really big moves in countries, particularly developing economies, where their local currency isn't that strong or where their governments aren't that trustworthy. So Argentina has really high crypto adoption, so does Turkey. And even in, we operate in South Africa, and one of the really interesting things we're seeing there is the Bitcoin Lightning Network. So this is a recent-ish innovation in Bitcoin that makes it cheaper and faster and easier to do peer-to-peer payments. That's really becoming more popular, and you're seeing actually, a lot of people having Bitcoin wallets and using this. And they're another country where the government issued money has a lot of issues. It's got high inflation rate. It's got capital controls. There's limits on how much you can send out of the country. There is a lot of reasons why people in certain countries would prefer Bitcoin over their government issued money. I don't think New Zealand is one of those countries. I don't see Kiwis sort of having problem with the New Zealand dollars in their bank account or sort of having a really big mistrust of the government, but there's definitely countries in the world that is happening. And it's one that's, I think we'll continue to see more of as cryptocurrencies have a greater longevity.
Definitely, yeah. And I think when we're talking about kind of the importance of crypto just kind of scaling up in the world and everybody dealing with just more and more exposure in different arms of their life. One of the big things we're seeing is it's obviously in the media a lot, but there's a lot of big institutions that are moving into crypto. We're talking about like big investment bodies and then just other kind of companies that aren't really involved in let's say investing specifically, but when we saw Tesla buy a bunch of Bitcoin and then sell it off a bit later and stuff, and obviously Elon's on a whole agenda of his own, but I guess the underlying question here is, do you think that potentially some big institutions are moving into crypto because they see it as a potential really good investment, or you think that they're trying to assert like a bit of control over the network perhaps?
Probably a bit of everything, right? Like you definitely see some companies that are buying crypto for, MicroStrategy is the classic example, right? Michael Saylor's company that buying Bitcoin to put on the balance sheet to as an investment with the the expectation or hope that it will go up in value. You're also seeing, I think a lot of other particularly banking and financial institutions are moving into cryptocurrency, not necessarily Bitcoin, but into other forms of crypto assets. And I think a lot of the rationale for this, one is, their customers are asking for it. So, they're bringing those products in, but also for their interbank settlements. We're seeing a lot of, big US banks actually building their own cryptocurrencies or, looking at using some of the existing crypto assets like, Ripple or Stellar and with the Swift network as well. How do we, take this technology and use it to make more efficient, international remittances, moving of funds? Because at the moment, the international fund remittance system is pretty bad. Like it takes a couple of days, for settlements. There isn't 7-day settlement. There is high fees involved. There's a lot of still manually entered information. There isn't the transparency. There isn't any traceability. And, you have sort of stories of, huge big mistakes being made between banks on these interbank settlements because there isn't that reconciliation layer. And so cryptocurrency and blockchain tech can solve for all of this. And it is really interesting to see the banks starting to move into that. They're not doing it in a coordinated way. Like, some banks are making their own, other banks are using off the shelf products. Some of them are just completely ignoring it, but it's, the institutional engagement has been a really key feature, I think, of the last 2 or 3 years in crypto, and something that we'll continue to keep seeing.
Yeah, and like following on from that, because we're talking about like a lot of innovations here and a lot of changes. Someone's actually just asked the question, what's the most innovative thing you've seen in the crypto world recently?
I think probably ordinals, just because I think it's kind of funny, right? Like Bitcoin is very different from, Bitcoin's this first ever cryptocurrency. It's actually, and this might sound like an oxymoron, but I would say it's a very conservative cryptocurrency. It doesn't change, it doesn't innovate. It's pretty, stuck in its ways. And as part of the Lightning Network upgrades, which were pretty, they were really quite significant because, again, there's not a lot of changes and innovation on Bitcoin. Any changes, these are decentralized, democratic networks. So if things want to be changed, someone needs to propose it, and then everyone needs to vote and decide if it's going to go ahead or not. And so there were a few changes that happened to make Lightning Network, which can make faster, cheaper payments. And as part of that, they effectively unlocked NFTs on Bitcoin, or at least someone figured out that, you could use this change to make NFTs, which is what ordinals were. And it's just like, it's a funny juxtaposition between this very conservative currency that accidentally built NFTs, which is kind of, probably one of the key things that very conservative Bitcoin maximalists hate about the Ethereum network. And yeah, so not a great innovation per se, but a funny sort of story in the history of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot happening in so many different areas, right? So it's a really exciting thing that even if you're not invested in it, you could just be paying attention to it, and it's probably just good to be aware of these things. And so, yeah. Someone's asked another question with regards to tax, and I think we'll jump back because I think it is really important actually. That someone's asked, if I invest $100 into Bitcoin and then it doubles to $200, and then I cash out my original investment and I leave $100 against it,
Yeah.
what do I actually pay tax on? Is that something you know the answer to?
Yeah, let's step through it. Okay, so you spent $100 buying Bitcoin. It's now worth 200. So every dollar you made has doubled in value. Then you sell $100, and so that sale is a disposal. So you're disposing of crypto, so it's a taxable event. And then you go, okay, so I disposed of $100 of crypto. How much did that crypto originally cost me? That crypto cost you $50. So your $50 purchase became 100. So you pay tax on the $50 difference. You still got the other 100, which also cost you $50. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Well, you're like, when
definitely.
you dispose of it, work out what the cost of the portion that you're disposing is. So you can't say it cost me $100 and then the rest of my Bitcoin's now free. It's like, no, that was half your Bitcoin, so it was half your investment cost.
Yeah, because I think the important thing here for people to acknowledge is it's not really the dollar value that we're talking about. It's actually the amount of crypto and its associated value, right? So if we have that 1/1,000,000th of a Bitcoin and it goes up to a certain amount of money, then we're essentially paying that difference in the increase of value, as you mentioned. So yeah, no, that's a really good answer. Thank you for that. And I am really interested to see the slides on the crypto myths. So maybe we'll jump over, and if you want to walk us through a couple of those myths,
All
and
right.
then we can jump back into some Q&A.
Sounds good. So I've got two really popular crypto myths that I thought I'd just give a little bit of a talk to. The first one is that crypto is just used by criminals. And this is, the original early days of crypto, criminals definitely used it because criminals are great adopters of innovation, right? They're always the first to get on board with new technology, to try new stuff because they're very, they're like scammers, right? They're very good at finding ways to make their business more efficient. But the reality about crypto is that it's actually a pretty bad tool for criminals because it's so transparent. So every single transaction that you make using cryptocurrency is publicly visible. There are things you can do to get around this. You can use privacy coins and to some extent mixers, but these things are, by and large, transactions on the blockchain. Everyone can see them. Everyone knows what's going on. You can trace them, and there's a lot of really good tools out there that make it very easy for companies, for law enforcement to trace what is happening on the blockchain, and even to trace through things like mixers. And lastly, it's regulated. So if you're trying to use crypto, you need somehow first to get your money into it. And at the end, you need to get your crypto back out into normal money. And on either of those legs, you'll have companies that are regulated, that have to do KYC, that have to do anti-money laundering. So it's really difficult, and it will become increasingly difficult for cryptocurrency. Cash is a much better way to launder money and even bank accounts, but crypto, it's got challenges for that. The other myth is around crypto, destroying the environment. And this is something we heard a lot about over the last few years. You probably would have seen the headlines of, Bitcoin's using more energy than XYZ country. And this is something that, again, definitely in the early days, this would have been true. But the things to remember with cryptocurrency, again, there's this huge amount of transparency going on there. And it's also about, the perspective that we put on things. And lastly, there's this awesome piece around innovation. So I'll just talk through each of these quickly. And, firstly around perspective, it's easy to say Bitcoin uses more energy than XYZ country, but what does that actually mean? Like, how does that compare in perspective to other things? And don't know if this is a little bit difficult to see, but you've got Bitcoin on the left here, the amount of carbon emissions. You've got gold industry, you've got the global banking system, aviation, marine transport. And then over here on the far right, you've got tumble dryers in America. So the American households use more energy and have a bigger carbon footprint from tumble dryers than the entire Bitcoin network. And this will actually, this slide's a year and a half old, and things will have improved massively since then because, because of innovation, right? So cryptocurrency is super innovative, and there are really smart people looking at solving these problems. One of the really amazing things that happened in the last year in cryptocurrency is that the Ethereum network moved from being proof of work, which is energy intensive, to being proof of stake, which is very, very low energy. And this was an amazing accomplishment because, again, remember, cryptocurrencies, like Ethereum, are decentralized. There is no one sitting there coordinating it. There's no CEO going, okay, guys, we've got to make this change. We've got to do it by this date. These are your KPIs. Like the entire Ethereum network and ecosystem self-organized to move on to a much more energy efficient way of working. And they did it all. And this is a network that, processes millions, I think even billions of transactions of value in a day, and it moved without missing a beat, without downtime, without outages. Like, it's seriously impressive, the innovation that happens in crypto, and how the amazing stuff that can be achieved by decentralized teams, people all around the world just coordinating online and working together to solve complex problems. So there's the lower energy use networks, which we're seeing, more and more popular now. But there's also increases in the innovation in the renewable energies that Bitcoin's using. And it's not as simple as saying, how much energy something's using, because there's a lot of energy that can actually be wasted. And, energy is generated, through, coal burning or through solar, wind, etc. If that energy isn't stored in a battery, it's wasted, it's effectively lost, it's just burnt as heat. And so there are a lot of places where Bitcoin is using, Bitcoin mining is using surplus energy on electricity grids, using off-peak, that sort of thing. And there's also a lot of moves for Bitcoin towards renewables. And the last point to make on this is that, both in regards to this innovation and the perspective, is that crypto is incredibly transparent. So the fact that we can sort of put those big headlines of Bitcoin uses more energy than XYZ country is because there's so much transparency in the system. When I go and buy a stock, like say I'm buying a stock in, in Westpac, I don't have ability to understand the carbon footprint of my stock purchase or of Westpac as a company. But with Bitcoin, you can understand those things because there's that transparency. So for me, it's actually a really good news story of, in the grand scheme of things, Bitcoin is not the bad player here, but the transparency enables us to be aware of the carbon impact, and it helps us drive innovation. So pretty good news there. Cool. Should we go back to some more questions, Doug?
Yeah, it's really interesting about the tumble dryers. Like I can't really get over that. But
it just doesn't make such a good headline, right? Like no newspaper is going to go around with a headline of US tumble dryers use more electricity than Venezuela. Like no one cares. So when it comes to
no, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And I think, as you've mentioned, the massive transparency there really enables us to dive deep into what we can do to improve it. Whereas I've never seen a report on how to reduce your tumble dryer electricity use. So it's and it's really interesting, as you say, with perspective, right? Because you don't always know what the transparency is kind of surrounding investing in a stock, like you say, with Westpac, and you don't know how much like travel they use, like there's no carbon accounting and stuff like that until recently, because there's been a few things undergoing with the governments of New Zealand and other countries whereby next financial year they're going to start doing some carbon accounting, which would be awesome. Because if we can bring the other investment arms into the same level of transparency as the crypto world, then we can be, trying to make better decisions everywhere. So crypto is actually leading the charge on a lot of these transparency with an environmental impact. So it's really awesome to see. And as you mentioned with the Ethereum network changes, it's just really awesome to see everything developing and going in a better direction, especially for us in New Zealand, because we're so proud of, our environment and everything. So it's perfect. And we have a couple more questions that I think would be perfect for us to go through. So one of them actually involves the NZ Select Committee. So it says, will the latest report from the New Zealand Select Committee make it easier to buy crypto in New Zealand? For example, no delays, frozen bank accounts, no calls from the fraud team and stuff like that.
I mean, I hope it will make it easier in terms of, one of the things the select committee recommendations talked about was around, access to banking, which has, been an issue for a very long time. So to ensure that, people who want to innovate and build businesses in the crypto sector can get bank accounts will be, a really important next step forward. Whether it means you won't get a call from the fraud team, I would say probably not. But there's been a lot of press recently about this issue around fraud in New Zealand, and it's a really big problem. And a lot of the problem is because our banking systems are so antiquated. You might have seen the case recently of, people sending money to what they thought was a Citibank term deposit, but instead they're sending it to, Joe Bloggs and Patararu. And because we don't have the ability to know who we're actually paying because our bank systems aren't, the tech's a bit out of date. So there's a lot that the banks need to do to catch up with all the necessary anti-scam and anti-fraud stuff. And until they can build the tech to properly protect us from scams and frauds, you're probably going to keep getting calls from their fraud department to make sure, you know what you're doing, and that, they are doing their best to look after their customers, but it is also frustrating. And I totally get the, the desire to have those days behind us, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. And I guess that's another reason for us to be trying to push forward with the developments within the crypto space, right? Because if crypto is so transparent and helps people understand where their money's going, how much, how often, exact time, all that stuff, and then we're looking at these bank transactions and they're kind of struggling to provide the same level of information, the more kind of demand and people that are keen to get involved in crypto and using it instead of banks puts pressures on the banks to actually catch up and provide that level of transparency. So again, even if you're not an investor in crypto, it's important paying attention to this information, because the pressure that individual investors can make to make other institutions catch up and be better is really awesome to see, not just from the environment point of view and the transparency, but technological standpoint. We're just here to improve all the time. And yes, I think that's really awesome to see. In the US, we've seen the SEC going after crypto, and obviously there have been big fraudulent plays from some big names such as Celsius, which have happened recently. And so then SEC and other bodies like trying to crack down on it and stuff. Do you think that there is a happening of New Zealand kind of engaging in trying to crack down on it in the same level? Or do you think maybe it's just happening in the US because it's a bigger volume? Or what do you see as the differences there?
Yeah, a lot on this one, right? So, I mean, I think firstly in the US, the SEC is they're getting outmaneuvered on this, and it's not so much the case against things like Celsius, like that should never have been able to happen. FTX similarly, but the US against things like Coinbase, where Coinbase has been asking very publicly for clarity on regulation, haven't been getting that, and then the SEC has been effectively doing regulation by enforcement, which no one ever wants to be party to. But the lack of clarity they have on what is a security, what isn't, where does they've sort of said Bitcoin's out, XRP in, but then got overruled. Ethereum, there's ETHgate going on at the moment as to where that sits, and the SEC are. Yeah, they don't. It doesn't feel like they've got a very clear game plan or a very good strategy on this, and they're really playing catch up on something they should have been proactive about years ago, rather than trying to do a muddled catch up where they're sort of saying different things in different places and not even having a very compelling case for most of it. But the good news on that is that there's more to the world than just America, and America gets a huge amount of airtime in crypto circles, but you've got other governments, like you've got Hong Kong, Singapore, and even in Europe coming out with clarity on regulation, things like, regulatory sandboxes that companies can sort of set up and play in, much better guidance for companies as to how, what the rules are and how to play by them, and, better guidance for customers as well. So the US, I think, is probably going to just end up falling behind in the global scene when it comes to digital assets. And again, I firmly believe that, the world of finance is digitizing. And if you're a country that's not embracing that, you're going to be left behind, and it's going to have big economic impact. Which brings us to New Zealand. And New Zealand regulators have actually been really good when it comes to crypto assets. The FMA is not, they've put out some, good guidance, some clarification on that. RBNZ sort of doing similar things around stable coins and central bank digital currencies. None of our regulators have come out and said, no, you can't, do X, Y, Z. It's more just around what is the right part of the existing framework for these things to fit in. And if they don't fit in the existing framework, when is the right time to build new regulation? And what I think is really positive in New Zealand is that the regulators are sort of they're waiting to give things a bit more chance to give, they're keeping a watching brief on it, but they're not putting in regulation too early. And regulation too early would stifle innovation, and it particularly runs the risk that you get it wrong. And crypto assets are, how do you define what a particular, a single token is? You can't, it's a very challenging area for regulation, and having principles based rather than very strict regulation is really important, but also allowing a bit of innovation and then bringing regulation when it's needed. So I think New Zealand's doing it well. There's probably a little bit more we could do in terms of some of the clarity, and there's definitely some more that we could do for the banking sector, but the regulators are walking I think a reasonable balance between regulation and consumer protections.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because it was actually, I think, in June last year when we held a presentation, we talked about the exact same thing. We talked about New Zealand's approach to the regulations and how they would kind of play with it. And I guess a follow-up to that then, because you're obviously quite happy with the approach and stuff from New Zealand, is what do you think about the pace of New Zealand's response? Because since we last talked, it's been about 15 months. Do you think a lot, or actually, do you think enough has changed within the 15 months? Or do you think that it's maybe a little bit too slow in terms of reacting? Or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think definitely too slow. Like, the Select Committee report's a good example. Like, I presented to that committee and I think it was the end of 2021. We're now late 2023 and it's only just come out. It'll be a long time before we see any action on the recommendations. And I think the big challenge here, like the challenge isn't so much in, hey, we need more regulation, we need it faster. But the challenge is in, this is a really good opportunity for New Zealand to, harness the economic impact and, jobs, incomes from digital assets, from blockchain industry. It's the kind of industry that it doesn't matter if we're on the other side of the world, that can actually be a good advantage. It's got very low carbon footprint. It's, not relying on primary products like many of our other, big GDP sectors are. So it's a huge opportunity for New Zealand, but to harness it, we need to be putting ourselves out there as a environment that's friendly for digital assets, for blockchain tech. And countries like, Singapore, Hong Kong, the UK, even Australia are starting to, make those noises to try to get in place the building blocks they need to be good environments for these businesses to build in. And New Zealand's just silent on it. And we have such a good opportunity with, single layer of government, small country, well networked, good tech stack, with fiber everywhere. We could be doing more. And that's what I think is the opportunity that's been missed.
Yeah, definitely understand. And I think one of the things about New Zealand is when we are first to act, it's really exciting and we can be the leaders globally in different things. And unfortunately, we've missed the boat on a few different areas within the crypto space. But because we are so lean and so small, there is the potential for us to do that, right? And with you leading EDZ Crypto and leading the charge, maybe we'll get select committee reports faster than 2 years in the future. But we'll see about that one. Now, I'm conscious of the time. It's now 1:30 in New Zealand. So what we will do is we'll wrap it up. So I'll pass it over to you, Janine, if you've got any final comments you want to let anyone know about.
Look, if you're interested to know more, jump on our website. We've got a really good Learn site. So learn.easycrypto.com. Heaps of resources. My team is amazing at building content. It's all free of charge. And if you want to learn about different coins, different strategies with crypto, different news in the crypto event, jump on there and also reach out to us if you have any questions. We're always happy to talk. And we just love being there for Kiwis who are interested in getting involved in crypto.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, and can definitely attest Easy Crypto is an amazing place to go and learn resources and has incredibly low fees. Definitely go check them out and just get interested in it. Rewatch this webinar, go look at our other one. If you have any questions, you can email us, you can email the Easy Crypto team, and we'll get all your questions sorted. So with that, thank you so much, Janine.
Thanks very much for having me, Doug, and thanks everyone for listening.
Awesome. And with that, we'll wrap up the show for today. This live stream will stay on YouTube and you can access it anytime. We'll send you through an email with a link and some other information. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. It's been our pleasure, and we will see you again for another stream.